All right, how do we build a team? How do you put a team in place? So let me tell you a little bit about the history behind the Old Souls and the full group with the apprentice group, the Jazz Maniacs it's called. So essentially, it was around 2016, 2017. I was personally a little bit frustrated with the fact that I was missing a little bit this concept of training. Okay, there were the parties, then the festivals and the competitions, but where do people go and train? Now, there were some training sessions in Brussels, but it turned out to be more of like a tea dance, or people like, putting on very slow music and just kind of social dancing together. And it didn't really feel like the trainings that I was used to as a b-boy, which was truly busting your arse and sweating like crazy and, like running out of breath type of training. So with Jill, we seeked out to establish something, and we were fortunate to have our friend Slobs and his partner at the time that were also motivated to do something. And so we founded the first Old Souls group. It was just the four of us. This is what I generally say to people. For training, I would recommend that if you're by yourself, find somebody else. If you're doing Lindy Hop and you're a couple, find another couple. Now, another reason that I wanted to do training is that it was purely selfishly. I hate training by myself. I hate being in a room and then just, like just looking around and nobody's there. I like to see other people busting their arse and feeling like, oh, I shouldn't be sleeping here. I should be, working as well. And the reason is that also the effect of having somebody else come into training with you is that when you're not motivated because it's raining outside or because the public transport isn't working or for some reason, you're like, hey, I just better stay at home and watch a movie and that's it. You know that other person is showing up to training and waiting for you and expecting you. So they're going to send you a message, okay, I'll see you later at training. They'll be like, or they'll even say, hey, where are you? And, you don't want to let them down. So that's when, you put on your raincoat and you take the bike and you cycle to training or whatever, So it allows to pull you out of the rut, pull you out of the mud. And when the other person is feeling down, you do that favor for them. So that's good. And when it comes to Lindy Hop, as a couple, things can quickly get out of hand, where you start kind of having a little bit of rows or whatever. And what's nice is when there's somebody else in the room, you can say, hey, we're having a disagreement here. Can I try with you, or can you help us out here, or help us make a choice, or and that really, really relieves a lot of tension. If you have that agreement together, say, hey, time out, let's ask. And it's very nice to have that third eye, a different opinion. And then the other thing as well is that simply it's just way more fun to train all together and to be able to set a date for ourselves to do, okay, we're going to do a routine. Now, the way that we did it is that we set very classic routines at the beginning. We said, okay, we're going to do a Tranky-Do / California routine performance. And that's all we did. We kind of mixed it together. We created something. We started choreographing something. But the material that was in there, the choreographic material, was always based on some old school stuff. This was important to us because we established our style and our common ground as we love the old school aesthetic, right? So we're always looking up to the originators of the dance, whether it would be their video clips or their material or whatever it was. And this is kind of important as well to establish as a group, is what is it that identifies you? Now, you don't need to absolutely do this at the very beginning, but the earlier you do it, the clearer it is. And from that day on, from those group 4 people, from that day on, with that common interest that we had, is going to define the whole stylistic choice and value for the whole rest of the legacy. I assure you that. And we were very almost very conservative in our way of approaching the dance and jazz and Lindy Hop, and so it has left an imprint on the rest of people. I'll go back to that. I'll go back to having a common vision afterwards. But setting up that team at first, that's all you need. And just make sure that you have people who are extremely committed. If you're going to go with somebody else, just make sure that you both agree that, okay, we are committed, we are dedicated to this, right? And establish little goals for yourselves so that you feel like you're getting achievements. You put it again, you do a little showcase, a tiny incy showcase at a social dance, and you're going to feel like, okay, you've achieved something together, and then you move on, you set the next one and set the next one. Now, what happened between the 4 people there and now the nearly 40 people training today in Brussels? So when we put the Old Souls together and we were 4 or 5 people, we wanted to seek more people, to be honest. But the thing is that nobody truly had the aspiration or the level that we had. We had traveled to different festivals. We were looking at old clips, figuring things out ourselves for already some time, and we felt that there was nobody really close to the level that we were trying to achieve at that moment. And the other thing, what happened is that as we were doing these kind of small shows, people were asking us, can I join the trainings? And this is a phenomenon that will occur. At the beginning, we were doing things, shows where we were crashing, it looked rubbish, but after a while, people started to see, oh wow, this isn't so bad actually. Or people, oh wow, they're really improving. And people seeing where we were trying to bring jazz and the Lindy Hop and could feel like, hey, actually, I want to do that too. People were somewhat knocking on our door, and at the same time, we felt that we needed new people to be able to continue this legacy and grow, right, as a team. And therefore, we launched an audition. We felt that that was probably the best way to do things. And we did an audition. There was 35 people that showed up, more or less. And the way that we did the audition was, I would teach a small routine, very simple routine. I think it was like maybe 8/8 or whatever. I show that in 10 minutes, and it's like, okay, practice. And we would look at who was genuinely practicing versus those who were just kind of standing there and waiting for me to show the steps again. So it was less about the end result of that choreography, but more like what's their methodology of working. That was more what we were seeking, because that's what we were afraid of, is that we didn't want to turn this training into a class. So that was a very important quality, and nobody had technique, so nobody had foundation, so that was certainly at that time, less of a quality. And at the end of the day, we took something like 2 or 3 people. And when they showed up the next week to trainings, they were expecting obviously a lot more people to be there. And they looked around and they just saw us and those 2 other folks. So they were like, oh, wow. So this is kind of serious. And we were like, yeah, this is really serious. So there was a pressure to commit. There was also a feeling, of course, I think for them perhaps as a success, like they made it or something like that. So it does help, like people feel like, okay, I should commit to this, And what happened after that was there were more and more people that started knocking on our doors to be part of this as well. And in that case, we were only training the Friday night, and we said, let's open up a second day of training. And that was the Sunday afternoon. And that was an open session. It was an open session where everybody could join in. The thing is that now we had, 6, 7, 8 dancers who knew how to train, that were now, when there was like 5 or 6 or 8 other dancers that joined, they knew to follow the others and the whole structure. So everything was set in place so it didn't fall into a tea dance. And, it would be the first thing when somebody steps into that room, we would say, hey, welcome, it's great to have you. this is how it works. So the first half we do jazz, second hour we do Lindy hop, or you could do whatever you want, Lindy hop and jazz. And then the last bit we just do a jam or whatever. And very easy. So that's how it worked. And gradually we did more auditions, we brought more people on board, and some of those people that were initially in the B group, which we said we'll call the first group the Old Souls, and the other one, at that time we said let's call them the Jazz Maniacs, because it allows to, when we perform all together, we could say, hey, we're the Jazz Maniacs. Some people were being asked sometimes to do corporate gigs. I hate corporate gigs, so I don't like to be part of them, but let's put the word jazz in there. So Jazz Maniacs, so that people know what we're looking for. The Old Souls was more like, just kind of a cool name, more for jazz connoisseurs, or we were always with this ambition to kind of say, what if we were able to showcase jazz to urban dancers one day? And if we were an urban dance group, what could be a funny way to call ourselves? And so that's how that name came up. But regardless, I don't think I think there's some confusion. I think maybe someday if you do that, just call it A group, B group, or apprentice group, or whatever it is, but just kind of maybe put it under the same name. By the way, all of this was never attached to a school, so it was always independent from a school. So if you're from a school or whatever, maybe it can work. But the thing was, what's nice today is that because this is fully independent from a school, there were some, I guess, retaliations between some of the schools in Brussels at some point. But now all of those schools are asking these teachers to teach in their school. At the end of the day, all the schools were reaping the benefits from this project, which was just purely, independent from anything and not attached to a school or anything. Now, financially, how does it work when you're renting a room? And these are the mistakes that I would say don't make the same mistakes that we did at the beginning. At first, we said, all right, this is the cost of the room. We'll divide it between anybody, that shows up. So this is the cost per hour. We have it for 2 or 3 hours. And so we divided the cost between those that would show up. And I would do an Excel sheet of, okay, who showed up? Okay, now you need to pay X. But what we were doing was we were punishing those who were the most committed, because they would show up the most to the trainings and have to pay the most. And I thought that was really unfair. And it was also a nightmare to organize, to figure out who was there, and, nightmare. So at the end of the day, we said, look, easy peasy. It's just, you pay for 6 months. That's it. A straight fee for 6 months. It's like almost like a membership, just to be able to show up to to those trainings whenever you want. And if you miss out, that's your problem. And at the end of the day, it wasn't very expensive. I don't know, I think it was maybe 40 euros per person for 6 months, something along those lines. And yeah, to be honest with you, I think we should have put that in place way sooner if we'd known. And if there are some other projects where you want to do you're prepping a show or a competition and you need more rooms more often, then we would just split the cost evenly between everybody. Okay, it doesn't matter who showed up or didn't. So again, the same kind of principle. And when you have more people, it's always it's a lot of work for one person to inspire people and organize the rooms and this and that. And Jill was very much a part of the whole production behind that and the logistics. And to be honest, it's a lot of work. So if you can very quickly have just asked in the group who would be willing to take on board, organizing a room, or taking care of the expenses there, or this or that, right? Now, and then you can rotate that every 6 months or every year or so. But definitely don't think that you could do everything by yourself for, 2 years straight, you're going to be burnt out.